Welcome to the Fate Spun channel, a place where every story will make you feel, wonder, and hold your breath. Are you ready? Then go ahead. Story number 1. The parking war that went too far. I live in a small apartment complex where parking spaces are a precious commodity. Each unit is assigned one spot, and any additional cars need to park on the street. My neighbor Mark had a nasty habit of taking my assigned parking spot whenever he came home late at night. At first, I tried to be reasonable. I left notes on his windshield kindly asking him to stop. I even spoke to him in person, but he brushed me off with a dismissive, "Chill out, man, it's just a parking spot." Things escalated when I came home one night, exhausted after a long day at work, and found his car in my spot again. The street parking was completely full, so I had to park nearly half a mile away. That was my breaking point. If Mark wasn't going to play fair, then neither was I. The next day, I started plotting. I work in IT, and I'm pretty handy with gadgets. I installed a dash cam in my car to catch Mark in the act of parking in my spot. Over the next week, I gathered plenty of evidence, but instead of immediately reporting him to the landlord, I decided to take things a step further. Mark's car was an older model with keyless entry. I did some research and found a harmless but effective way to mess with him. A car alarm fob jammer. It doesn't damage the car, but makes the key fob temporarily useless within a certain range. I bought one online and waited for the perfect moment. The next time Mark parked in my spot, I activated the jammer. When he came down the following morning, coffee in hand, I watched from my window as he struggled to unlock his car. He waved his key fob frantically, hitting the button over and over. After about 15 minutes of frustration, he gave up and walked back inside. For the next few days, I repeated the prank every time he parked in my spot. Mark eventually resorted to calling a tow truck, thinking his car had a serious electrical issue. The tow company couldn't find anything wrong, and Mark's confusion only grew. Finally, I submitted my evidence to the landlord. Mark received a stern warning and was fined for violating the parking policy. He hasn't parked in my spot since. To this day, Mark has no idea I was behind his mysterious car troubles. He's been unusually polite to me ever since, probably suspecting I had something to do with it. Revenge never tasted so sweet. Story number 2, revenge served cold. Literally. When I was in college, I rented a small apartment in a shared building. My upstairs neighbor, Tim, was the absolute worst. He blasted music at all hours, ignored noise complaints, and hosted loud parties that spilled into the hallway. I tried talking to him multiple times, but his response was always the same: a smirk and a sarcastic, "Lighten up, it's college." The final straw came during finals week. I had an important exam the next morning and desperately needed sleep. That night, Tim decided to throw his loudest party yet. The walls shook from the bass, and I could hear people shouting and stomping above me. I knocked on his door around midnight, pleading for him to turn it down. He laughed in my face and slammed the door. I was furious, but instead of confronting him again, I decided to get creative. I remembered the building had a communal water tank on the roof that supplied hot water to all the units. Tim's apartment was directly below it. I hatched a plan that would make his life uncomfortable without breaking any rules. The next morning, after his party had finally ended and the apartment was quiet, I climbed up to the roof. Using a simple but brilliant trick I found online, I adjusted the thermostat on the water tank, turning it all the way down. This didn't affect anyone else in the building, because most of us had electric kettles or other heating methods. But Tim, with his old apartment and reliance on the communal tank for hot showers, was in for a surprise. For the next week, I watched gleefully as Tim's party lifestyle started to unravel. He'd stumble out of his apartment in the mornings, shivering and grumbling about the freezing showers. I overheard him complaining to friends about how he couldn't figure out why the hot water wasn't working. Maintenance checked the system but couldn't find the issue because I always reset the thermostat before they arrived. Eventually, Tim's party hosting days came to a halt. He started keeping to himself, probably because he couldn't even shower properly, let alone host guests. By the time finals were over, Tim had become a ghost of his former self. I turned the thermostat back to normal, but the damage was done. He moved out a month later, much to the relief of everyone in the building. It felt good knowing I had gotten my revenge without causing any permanent harm. Sometimes, karma just needs a little push, preferably one involving cold water. Story number 3. How I got back at my rude boss. I used to work at a small marketing agency where my boss, Sarah, was a nightmare. She was rude, micromanaging, and had a habit of taking credit for her employees' work. If anything went wrong, she'd throw us under the bus without hesitation. Everyone dreaded coming to work, but we needed the paycheck. The final straw came when Sarah claimed credit for a massive campaign I had spent weeks working on. It was a success, and the client sent an email specifically praising me for my creativity and effort. Sarah forwarded the email to the entire team, but edited out any mention of my name, making it seem like she had done the work herself. I was livid. That night, I decided enough was enough. If Sarah wanted to play dirty, I'd outsmart her. Over the years, I'd noticed that Sarah barely understood the tools and systems we used. She relied on us to handle everything technical. That gave me an idea. Our team used a shared scheduling tool to manage deadlines and meetings. Sarah always insisted on being added as the owner of every project so she could keep tabs on us. I knew that her biggest weakness was her disorganization. She constantly missed meetings and deadlines because she relied too heavily on the tool's notifications. So, I made a small but brilliant tweak. Using my admin access, I subtly changed Sarah's notification settings. Instead of receiving reminders an hour before a meeting or deadline, she'd get them the day after. It wasn't noticeable at first. She was already chaotic, so no one suspected a thing. The results were almost immediate. Sarah started missing important meetings with clients, forgetting deadlines, and scrambling to catch up. The team watched in quiet satisfaction as her once iron grip on the office began to unravel. The best part? Every time she tried to blame us, we had evidence that we'd completed our work on time or reminded her about meetings. One day, Sarah missed a critical presentation with a high-paying client. They were furious, and the higher-ups finally started questioning her competence. She couldn't shift the blame this time, and within a month, she was let go. After she left, I fixed the settings and stepped up to present my ideas directly to the new management. They were impressed, and I was eventually promoted. Sarah's downfall wasn't just satisfying, it was a reminder that treating people poorly will eventually catch up with you. Karma, in this case, just needed a little technical assistance. Thank you for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel, like it, and don't forget to leave a comment. See you in the next video. Good luck!